Are you looking for a fun scroll saw project that'll spark a child's imagination? In this video, I'll show you step by step how to create this handcrafted pony staple playset, complete with horses, riders, trees, a barn, fences, and even a classic wooden truck and trailer. It's the perfect blend of creativity, craftsmanship, and play. Let's fire up the scroll saw and bring this wooden world to life. This set of plans comes from toymakingplans.com, my favorite source for toy plans. You purchase the plans, download the file, print the pages, and you're ready to go to the shop and start making sawdust. As you can see from the picture on the first page, this set contains a large number of parts, and I believe it will keep a child busy for hours of imaginative play. The barn is made from parts that make it easy to assemble and disassemble. This makes the set easy to pack up and store when it's not in use. There are many fence sections, some hay bales, and a pickup truck pulling a trailer. There are 2 sets of boys and girls, as well as pet dogs and horses for them to ride. I will make some of the items from poplar so they can be painted. I use mineral oil on the remaining items, keeping everything child safe. Let's have some fun building this toy set. The fence sections are simple, but since they're long rectangles and the scroll saw is not the best tool for cutting straight lines, I'll do these another way. I created a pattern from a scrap piece of 1/4-inch plywood and drilled the 3 1-inch holes at the drill press. I took a piece of poplar that was wide enough to cut 4 strips, 2 3/8 inches wide, and long enough to fit 3 fence sections in a row. I used the pattern to trace 3 fence sections onto each strip. I'll cut them to length on the radial arm saw, and then I'll drill the holes at the drill press later. I printed all the pattern pages, cut out the patterns from the paper, and then attached them to the wood. It doesn't matter what order you cut the parts in, and I had a number 7 Pegasus modified geometry blade already in the saw from my last project, so I started with the pieces on 1/2-inch stock. These cuts are simple, so a number 7 is a better choice than a number 5 because it will cut faster. I'll leave a link to my video on blade size choice on the screen and in the description in case you'd like to dive deeper into the subject. As usual, I started with the interior cuts. These are large rectangles with curved corners, making them among the easiest internal cuts to achieve. The external cut is also pretty easy. It's a combination of straight lines and curves, basic scroll saw cutting. This would be an excellent project for someone new to the scroll saw, as it provides a platform to learn basic skills while producing a fun project simultaneously. For experienced scrollers like me, the project offers relaxing and productive shop time. I used scroll saw tape to attach this pattern to the wood, and one of the reasons I like and use it so much is that when you're done cutting, the tape and pattern peel off quickly and easily. The set includes a 6 trees, and I cut these from 3/4 poplar, still using the number 7 blade. These allowed me to use some scraps left over from other projects. I'm using poplar because it takes paint nicely, and I'll be painting these green. I used a glue stick to attach the tree patterns to the wood for several reasons. It's a pain to cut scroll saw to fit odd shapes, and it's expensive. Glue sticks are cheap, and it's easy to apply to the back of the pattern, then flip the pattern over and adhere it to the wood. While I have the number 7 blade in the saw, I'll continue with 3/4 thick parts. Notice the leg shapes of the 2 boys and girls. They seem bow-legged, and they are, because they're designed to either stand or ride the horses. I'll give you a tip here, something I learned by making a mistake in the past. You need to ensure the space between their legs is wide enough to fit on the horse. Measure the distance here and ensure it's 3/4 of an inch or even a smidgen wider. When choosing your material for the horses, it should be 3/4 or slightly thinner. If you don't make these checks, the boys and girls may not be able to ride the horses. I'm cutting the figures from 4/4 poplar, which was planed down to 3/4 of an inch thick. I'm using poplar because I plan on painting the figures. Partway through cutting the first boy, I noticed the blade was getting dull, so I tossed it. As long as I was replacing the blade, I decided to use a number 9 for the remaining material. The patterns are simple, and the number 9 will cut faster. You should realize by now that the choice of blade size is determined more by personal preference than by hard and fast rules. I tend to use the largest blade possible. You may want to use the smaller of the 2 size choices when the decision is on a borderline. I didn't show cutting the girl because there was nothing new to show. I can now move on to cutting the animals. There are several dogs in the set, and they're small enough that I can make them from scraps. I'm cutting this dog from Paducah, which is quite a bit on the red side, but since it's a toy, I don't think I need to be totally realistic. Like the other figures, this is a simple shape, easy enough for even a beginner to cut. Just follow the line and let the blade do the work. There was no point in showing me cutting all the dogs, so I reached into the stack of parts to see what else was needed, and I found this set of fenders for the pickup truck. This piece is cut from half-inch poplar because it will be glued to the pickup truck, and then the entire vehicle will be painted. I had several half-inch parts to cut, so I used scroll saw tape to attach them to a piece of poplar. I like scroll saw tape because it's easy to apply, holds patterns in place while cutting, and peels off easily when you're done. Additionally, it leaves no sticky residue behind. Reaching into the stack once again, this time I pulled out one of the Colts. Once again, I used scroll saw tape to attach the patterns, this time to 3/4 red oak. If you're wondering what happened there and what startled me, the blade came loose from the lower blade holder. That causes the white tension lever to flip up. This can happen from time to time if you're doing a lot of cutting on thicker material and have a tendency, as I do, to put more pressure on the blade than you should. When you combine this with a thumb and fingers that aren't as strong as they used to be, the blade holder was not as tight against the blade as it should have been. I'm willing to admit goofs like this if my viewers can possibly learn from them. I cut past the horse's ear to ensure a smooth turn, but then I backed up a bit and cut to the edge so I could remove the waste piece. It was big enough to save, so I cut it off and tossed it into the small pieces bin. It's big enough that I'll be able to use it later for another project. Then I went back to where I left off and finished cutting the colt. I cut a full-sized horse next, made from 3/4 red oak. This piece was left from another project, and it was very dense, so it took a while to cut. If you're new to scroll sawing, you may be surprised to learn how much variation there can be within one species of wood. The grain is very tight on this piece, and I believe that indicates the tree this came from grew very slowly. Looking back, I'm not sure why I chose this board when I was shopping for wood. The grain pattern wasn't beautiful, and I should have realized the board would be challenging to cut. I switched to the number 3 blade because I have several 1/4-inch thick pieces of Baltic birch plywood to cut. These will comprise the sides, front, back, and roof of the barn. I make it a habit to do the inside cuts first, although here the order is not critical. There will be 2 large inside cuts from this piece for windows in the side of the barn. These windows have rounded corners, so they're easier to cut than if they had square corners. This will make the cuts easier for an inexperienced person on the scroll saw. After I completed the windows, I cut around the outside perimeter. This is also an easy task because the corners are rounded there as well. The last part of this cut requires a little more care. I cut straight across the top of the side so I could come back and carefully cut the slots for the barn front and back to slide in. If you make this barn, be sure to check that the slots on the pattern measure 1/4 wide, because the front of the barn will slide into one of these and the back into the other. I've found the hard way that if your printer doesn't render pages at exactly 100%, you could have a slot that is less than 1/4 inch wide, and then the parts won't fit, and you'll have to go back and widen the slot a bit. The other thing I want to do well with these slots is to ensure they have straight 90-degree corners at the bottom, which is necessary for a good look and fit. I cut down the right side of the slot on the pattern, stopped right at the bottom, and then backed the blade out to the edge. Then I cut the parallel line on the left side of the slot. This time when I reached the bottom, I stopped cutting, but only backed the blade up very slightly, just enough so that it was no longer cutting. I used the blade curve just created, along with the waste area in the middle, to turn the workpiece 90 degrees to the next direction I wanted to cut. Then I made the shortcut across the bottom of the slot. I'll cut the front and back for the barn next. These 2 parts are also made from 1/4-inch Baltic birch plywood. Once again, these are simple patterns, easy enough for even an absolute beginner on the scroll saw. The only part where you will need to be exceptionally accurate is when cutting the slots that will slip over the slots in the sides. You want them to be precise so the parts fit together properly, with a Goldilocks fit, just right. Outstanding! That's exactly what I was aiming for. The 2 parts fit together snugly. After painting, the fit will become a bit tighter. I have a couple of 1.5-inch thick parts to cut, so I'm going to switch to a number 12 Pegasus Modified Geometry blade. I've found through experience that the number 3, 5, 7, 9, and 12 blades will cover any tasks I need to perform on the scroll saw. I'll make the inside cuts first, which will be the windows for the pickup truck. The Pegasus scroll saw, equipped with a number 12 blade, cuts 6/4 stock without any problems. However, not all scroll saws can handle stock this thick. If you're in the market for a scroll saw, ensure it can handle thicker materials if you ever expect to cut through thick wood. As I make the perimeter cut for the pickup truck, I wanted to pass along a few tips. The first is that even with a number 12 blade, cutting material 1.5 inches thick goes slowly. I tend to want to put more pressure on the blade to speed things up, but that's not what happens. One possibility is that the blade flexes under pressure and then it tends to bow. If it does, you'll not get a straight up and down cut on the wood. The edge will be curved instead. Another possibility is that the blade may overheat. If that happens, the hot blade could scorch the wood, and you'll have to sand off black spots later. The third possibility is that the blade will break. Anytime a blade breaks while you're cutting, it's an indication that something's gone wrong. That's the last of the parts, so I can move on to assembly, which is relatively easy with this set. There's not much assembly involved in this project, just the pickup truck and trailer. The plans from toymakingplans.com include layout pages that show exactly how to overlap the fenders onto the pickup truck body and where to place the sides on the trailer bed. I spread glue onto the fender areas where they would come in contact with the truck's body. I used the diagram to help me place the parts correctly, and then I used a couple of F-clamps to hold the fenders in place while the glue dries. You may have noticed that I already drilled a hole for the peg that will be used to connect the trailer to the truck. You may have also noticed that there are no axle holes in the truck or trailer. This set is intended for young children and can be moved along the floor without wheels. I used the diagram for the trailer to align those two sides with the base. This time I picked up the assembly and moved it over to the vise on the end of the workbench. I used the vise to hold half of it in place and added an F-clamp to the other half. There wasn't a lot of assembly, but there's a lot of painting and finishing to do. Here's a peek at the finished playset. As you can see, I wasn't kidding when I said there was a lot of painting and finishing to do. Any item not painted was finished with mineral oil. It's child safe and it brings out the color and grain of the wood while providing some protection against wear and tear. I'd love to read your comments on this project, and I will reply to every one. Engagement from my viewers helps me grow the channel. I'd love it if you'd subscribe, but I'm sure you already have. And I reward my viewers with a new video every week. Until I release the next video, you can watch the video suggested on the screen and search through my playlists. With over 200 videos to choose from, you can probably binge watch until I release my next video.